It's been a whirlwind every year. There's been a lot of days where you don't know if you have enough energy to keep going. You get extremely sad seeing all of the devastation around you, while at the same time, there's some hope in that when you see people get a new idea and pivot and become innovative.
You know, early on, the financial implications of the pandemic were very concerning as a nonprofit that relies on community support.
When the pandemic hit, I think we all know that food insecurity skyrocketed, and there were a number of people who no longer felt that they could safely go to the grocery store.
There's been an epidemic within the pandemic when it comes to addiction and people that are struggling with substance use. The number of fatal overdoses has just been exponential.
You know, we have a huge van, we have 2 vehicles, and we used to be able to load them up with 15 passengers, you know. Now we only load maximum of 3.
One of our really exciting campaigns is getting folks outside and inspired to want to save the natural places around them. So to keep our members safe, we had to stop all of those events.
This has caused everyone to rethink how they do business, and this has caused nonprofits to rethink how they run as organizations as well. So I think we are sitting at a moment in history where it's really exciting and it's really intimidating.
I would say that the pandemic really increased the amount of services that Local Food Hub provides, both in an expansion of our existing services. For example, our Fresh Pharmacy Fruit and Veggie prescription program expanded nearly 600% last year. And then we also have seen a change in how we adapted our programming. So, for example, we started a drive-through farmers market as a way to support the partner farms that we work with when all of their other sales outlets were drying up. So traditionally, our work has focused on helping farmers access the wholesale market. But when the pandemic hit, the wholesale market really started to shut down. So universities were going virtual, meaning their cafeterias were no longer purchasing, restaurants were shutting down, farmers markets were shutting down, and our farmers were coming to us saying, look, we don't know how we're going to make it. Most of our sales just disappeared overnight. So we developed the first farmers market in Charlottesville to operate during the pandemic, drive-through, pre-order only, totally contact-free. And since March 23rd, we have run, of 2020, so almost exactly a year to the day, we've run that market every 2 weeks, working with over 30 vendors in the process.
So the pandemic has created quite a crisis in childcare. We had parents that still needed to go to work, but childcare was shut down. Childcare operates on a very thin margin, and so many of them were considering whether they could even continue to operate during the pandemic financially, whether they could continue to go. And so one of the things that we were able to do is to provide professional development for the childcare providers while they were on this pause, and they were able to actually attend because they didn't have children in their care during this time. So we took this gap and we made it a learning opportunity and a growing opportunity for the childcare providers. And then our family support, we provide support to new moms, and we were able to take out diapers and to take out formula and take out supplies that they needed for new moms who were stuck at home with brand new babies and were fearful of going out. They didn't want to leave their home, and we were able to drop things off and make sure that they had those essential supplies. And we did this really unique thing. We did a drive up parking lot baby shower. And so new moms could come to our parking lot. We had a bunch of baby supplies there, and they could pick them up without having to go out into the grocery stores or in other places where they felt unsafe with their babies.
So COVID hit in March of 2020, and we were due to open a brand new building, 150,000 square foot building in May of 2020. Which included a new program called the Healing Place for Women and 40 new recovery residences. So that definitely threw a little wrench in the works for us.
Trying to complete a $28 million facility in the middle of a pandemic was just things that you wouldn't even imagine happening. We had one crew that was infected with COVID, and then he got tested and didn't tell anyone, and then actually affected all 3 of his cruise. So really it was about at least a 6-month delay from where we thought we'd be versus when we actually moved into the facilities.
Much like healthcare, we're frontline essential workers, so we've stayed open all of COVID. So really retooling our programs to learn how to make a congregate shelter and living space safe, how to do intakes with COVID, cleaning protocols, CDC, and the list is endless. But there were other challenges as well. We work on an army of volunteers, and all of a sudden our army of volunteers was gone with COVID. We have staff that was weary and just tired. And we also have, again, just sheer numbers have dropped, and our program really works on a capacity. And so with the numbers so low, it's been challenging to try and make all the elements of the program happen.
So I think over the next 6 months, the people who get it and who are innovative and who are ready to tackle some of these big problems are going to be able to survive. And then those who aren't willing to change or are scared of change are going to have a lot of struggles. And so I'm really looking forward to see the people that step up to the plate and say, we're ready to make this change. We're ready to move our region forward. But it can't happen if we don't change things up first.
The hardest part about the pandemic was managing the safety concerns of my staff. And with any staff, we're very small, but with any staff, there's a lot of tension around safety and risk. I tried to focus on safety, and it was never easy to find that sweet spot where everyone on the staff felt it was safe enough to work in person. And because we're place-based, to work virtually seemed very difficult and awkward and the antithesis of what we do.
We can do more things virtually than we thought we could. We have learned how to do Zoom's 12-step meetings, which we never thought we would need to or want to do. So we're able to connect with the greater recovery community through, virtually with Zoom meetings. We're also doing that internally more, where we're having meetings, and I think it's more efficient, honestly. There's not as much travel time. We used to be in 3 buildings. We would drive back and forth in between. Now we have Zoom meetings, Google Hangouts, and I find that we really can get that much more done.
That is one thing we're really proud about. We have really not lost a lot of our participants going to virtual formats, and in fact, some of our programs have actually thrived in a virtual format, which we would not have expected. It has allowed us to continue to meet families who are facing unique circumstances of transportation, or they can't get to the group that we're providing, or we can't be on site. They can't be on site in the same ways. We do play groups in low-income neighborhoods that we had to convert to virtual play groups, and we've been really thrilled that they've been full. Every single session has been full, and our team pivoted quickly and created resource kits that they took out to the families so that they could participate in the group from their home and have the materials that they needed and not be worrying about how they were going to get the materials.
I know everyone is experiencing Zoom fatigue, so while Virginia certainly does try to keep things in terms of meetings down to a minimum, because everybody is, if you do have the ability to work from home, then the lines are getting blurred between personal work-life balance and doing work. Our biggest event of the year, we actually call it a friend-raiser, but it's the Wild Virginia Film Festival, where we showcase outdoor recreation films, beautiful imagery, and environmental films. And unfortunately, it turned out to be fortunate, but we transitioned all of that online. So we were able to reach a bigger audience, and even had folks from the West Coast tuning in to watch it, which was really exciting. So that was one of the biggest ways, turning everything online, film screenings online, webinars online, instead of doing all of these in-person events.
We took a lot of things on virtually. For example, the mentoring sessions when the pandemic first hit, it's a scary time. So we definitely took everything virtually and stopped everything in person until, we felt a little bit more safe, rightfully so. But with that came additional partners to support that online platform. The mentoring program, we have had to revise that because of the amount of kids that are reaching out and the amount of families that are reaching out and wanting our services. So we've expanded the mentoring program. We've expanded the amount of mentors that we have.
2020 as a nonprofit was actually a really good year for us because the Stanton Creative Community Fund was created back in 2008 during the recession as a way to help entrepreneurs get their start and as a way to really encourage people to take a chance on themselves and get these businesses started. And so in 2020, when we hit another insane crisis, SCCF was able to go back to its roots and really start leaning into supporting the entrepreneurs who were struggling so much in 2020.
We're an organization that's been around for more than 30 years and top of mind and has a good reputation in the community. So we really were very fortunate in having many donors kind of come out of the woodwork and just think about basic needs that people needed in a pandemic, and they thought of us. The number of new donors that we connected with since March of last year has been tremendous.
We did not apply for the PPP loan because one of the beautiful things during the pandemic is that we received a lot of generous donations from our donors and from foundations. So we didn't really have the need, and I would have preferred for that money to go to organizations that needed it more.
We received a couple of grants from some local organizations, foundations to help us buy materials to sanitize our van constantly over and over and over again. So those things, I tell you, have been monumental in keeping our mission alive and keeping our work alive in what we do.
We were fortunate to be able to access the payroll protection program as an organization last spring. I know from speaking to colleagues in the nonprofit world that many nonprofits were able to access those dollars, which is wonderful.
It was really helpful just to provide a little bit of confirmation that things were going to be okay and that, our government was taking care of us in some way.
Early on, there were a lot of donations to support emergency needs. And so we gave away grocery cards, we gave away cleaning supplies, all because we received about $30,000 in emergency funds that were allocated just for the pandemic. But even beyond that, because of the George Floyd situation and the racial unrest, I think that there was a lot of generosity that was based on racial equity. And so we saw a large influx of donations in spite of the pandemic.
I think that 2020 also really brought to light the thousands of ways that systemic racism exists in our country, and so we're also really focused on supporting Black and minority-owned farms because they have faced literally centuries of systemic discrimination from the USDA.
This has been a hard year for a lot of reasons. There's a lot that's happened, and we've really taken a hard look at what we're doing and who we serve, and I think we're all have our eyes opened in a new way. And I hope we can share that with our community and our volunteers as well when they start to come back.
Depending on, once everybody gets vaccinated, we will be able to function a little differently and be a little bit more open to receiving people directly in to our programs, but that'll be a while until that happens.
Will things look a little bit differently because we know that we can work that way? Sure. I think we'll work in some sort of hybrid capacity. It makes sense if we can do it from home and we can still be successful in terms of, staff and even volunteering opportunities so we can reach those volunteers. I think we'll certainly work remotely, but our work is just one of our biggest pillars is getting folks connected to each other and in nature. So we'll certainly want to go back to that.
One of the biggest positives that Local Food Hub has seen from this pandemic is just the increased awareness around the adaptability and resiliency of the local food system. In the beginning of the pandemic, I think we all remember the news was full of headlines about how the industrial food system was sort of breaking down, and there might be things like hog shortages or food shortages, grocery store shelves, there are all of those pictures of empty shelves. And a lot of people were concerned, probably for the first time in their lives, that they may not be able to get the food that they wanted and needed when they needed it. And I think across the country, and definitely in our case, the local food system kind of jumped in and said, hey, we're here and we can adapt to this and we can get you the food that you need. And so it's our sincere hope that once the pandemic fully ends and things return to normal, that people will remember that it was the local food system that was here for them when the industrial food system couldn't adapt and couldn't feed us.
There have definitely been bright spots and things that we have found to make work, to make work through this period of time, as terrible as it's been in so many ways.
Programmatically, our life will never quite be the same, I don't think.
Things are looking on the up and up as we're coming out of the pandemic, so the future looks quite promising.
If us as an organization and me and myself personally have learned anything through this pandemic, it's that you can't underestimate the people around you. If they have the will, they will find a way. And so to see the nonprofits in our area, regardless of how tight things were and how intimidating things were, they were still out there in the community every day serving the community. And just the way that they stepped up to say, we see you struggling, and even if they were struggling themselves, they put their community first. While there is so much division around the US, if anything, it really did start bringing people together. And that's encouraging, especially as a person who had a baby during the pandemic. It's very encouraging to see that I've brought a baby into the world that will potentially see some harmony because of the work that these nonprofits are doing to bring people together.